Welcome back, you guys, to part 2 of Close the Gap, the graduate application process for undocumented students. So yesterday's session was mainly an overview about what grad school is, what are different pathways, what career exploration you should do, and how to stay organized and plan for it. But today we'll go into a bit more detail on other topics. So today we will be covering these 3 main things. We will touch upon different undocumented considerations, look into how to research grad programs, and then have an overview of what the grad application consists of, okay? So my name is Stephanie Arevalo Escobar. For those who don't know, I am the current USS graduate student mentor. I am a graduate student myself as well. I am in the computation media department, and I'm completing my master's. So if any of you are interested in STEM or have any related questions, feel free to let me know. So I can answer any questions regarding grad school and then also my career in itself as well. Okay, so the undocumented section. What are important details you should consider as an undocumented person? So one big thing to keep in mind is that location is very important when it comes to grad school or just higher education in general. So here, the first thing you should know is that there's no federal law that prevents U.S. colleges from admitting undocumented students. What that means is that there is no law set by the government that prohibits us from attending higher education. However, each state in the U.S. has their own laws and policies. So even if the government, like say Biden, doesn't say you can't go to college, each state can still make up their own laws, right? So it's very important to think about that before considering a school in whatever state, right? So keep in mind that each state will have its own laws regarding college access and equity. So big question to ask is, well, is the state where I want to go to grad school undocumented friendly, right? So this is a map by the, let me look at my notes real quick, the Higher Ed Immigration Portal. And this map is actually interactive and it shows you which states have opportunities for you as an undocumented student for higher education. So for example, they measure whether you have access and equity. And what that means is access refers to the fact of like, will they even let me apply in the first place, right? Will they allow you to enroll? Some states allow all undocumented students to enroll, whether you have DACA, TPS, anything or no status at all, right? But some only limit it to DACA recipients, and some don't let any undocumented individual of any kind apply, right? So that's a lot of limitations. Now, in terms of equity, what we refer to that is, well, even if they let you apply and give you access to apply, do they give you the resources for you to actually succeed, right? Equity is the idea of all having the same level of opportunities to succeed, right? So do they give you state financial aid? Do they give you scholarships and grants? How about in-state tuition, right? Because in some cases, in-state tuition can double the cost of what it usually would cost to go to school, right? And for example, in terms of state financial aid, think of here in California, if you complete the DREAM Act, you get Cal Grants. That's California financial aid, right? From the state of California, not the federal government. They're the ones that do FAFSA, you don't get that. But say you want to go to Colorado. Colorado doesn't have Cal Grants. They have their own state financial aid set up, right? So you would have to do your research about that before considering a school out there or at any other state for that matter. Most likely just like contacting the financial aid department, stuff like that. So these are a couple other things you have to consider. And how about actually, you take a look at the portal real quick just to give you an idea of what that looks like because it's very useful. I really like it. Let me put it in the chat so you guys can have it and probably like bookmark it. All right, and let me actually exit out of this real quick. Or maybe I'll open a new tab in a second. Okay. Cool, so I am going to do this full screen. I think I'm going to reshare. Yep, I'm going to reshare in 1 sec. All right, cool. So here it is. this is the higher ed immigration portal. Really great website, has a lot of information, very useful. Let me zoom in so you guys can see better. So they actually have various categories. This is like the main portal of all the states. They have specific details on like other things that you might be curious about. Like they even have stuff about driver's license. Can you get a driver's license in these other states? Stuff like that, right? It's really great. But they also cover stuff like professional licenses and occupational licenses. This is something I covered in the first part, that in addition to maybe like a master's, a PhD, or a professional degree, like a medical degree and stuff like that, there's also licenses, certifications, other things you can get in order to, do something with your bachelor's after college, right? So they also have information on that. Very great website. But besides that, if we look at the map, it shows the different states and has different colors. And these colors correspond to how much access they give you to higher education. And as you can see here, like it varies. Green ones are the ones that have pretty much all the same opportunities we have here in California. But there's some that maybe like yellow that might let you apply, might not have that much financial aid for you, stuff like that, right? And it varies the spectrum. So let's see, maybe we'll look at one state. Does anyone have a state in particular they want to take a look at? Maybe drop it in the chat, speak up. New York? Okay, cool. Let's look at New York. So New York seems to be another green state. I think that's also in part because there's a lot of immigrants in New York, just like in California. And you can see here that there's this many international students. But yeah, there's like 500,000 first gen and second gen immigrant students, which is great. I mean, you're not gonna be the only ones, right? And out of those, there's 25,000 undocumented students. So it's great to know that there's people in higher education in New York and they have comprehensive access. But what does that mean? So when you click learn more, it actually takes you to a page dedicated to that state. And it gives you a ton of information about, all these amount of students that are attending school, but not only that, they also tell you how many have DACA, how many are non-DACA students, etc. And they give you stats about jobs, a lot of other stuff. But what I want to look at is this. Here they let you know whether they give you in-state tuition and financial aid. That's really important, right? So this state does allow that, which is really helpful, and that means you can probably find funds for grad school if that's something you want to do. And just to put into perspective, how about we take a look at California and see the difference? Because I will say California is one of the states that has the most undocumented students. As you can see here, it's almost 4 times what there is in New York. So yeah, but there's a lot more first gen and second gen too that aren't necessarily undocumented. So you might have a sense of community in California that might not be as accessible in other states. So always keep that in mind. Even though school sounds very exciting, you want to be comfortable there too, right? You want to get along with the people. So really great website. Go ahead and check it out in your own time. Very useful. So let's go back to the presentation. Cool. So this is just putting into perspective that the state where you go to is very important. And along those lines, you also got to think of US Border Patrol. That's another possibility that can happen in any states along within the 100-mile zone from the border. Thankfully, there hasn't been that many detentions, or like there hasn't been that much ICE activity recently in these areas because, Santa Cruz is in that area. But thankfully, we haven't seen that a lot lately. But who knows, things can change, right? So always keep that in mind wherever you go to school, because that is something that can happen. You might bump into like some type of checkpoints, right? And you got to know what your rights are and how to react in that situation, okay? In fact, actually, I think we had a Know Your Rights workshop last week, and that gives you information on what you should do in these type of situations and how to keep yourself protected, regardless where you are as an undocumented individual, right? I know that already happened. If you guys weren't able to go, totally fine. I suggest you get in contact with Sarah Dominic. She is our immigrant attorney at UC Davis that works with us closely. She has monthly appointments available, or you can just email her, try to set up a separate appointment, ask her a question or whatever, right? Yeah, Sarah's super nice, love her. But yeah, definitely very useful, something to think about, right? Because you never know what can happen a couple years from now. And grad school takes several years, so anything can happen. Okay, so another thing I've had come up when I've talked to students is like they're concerned about having to say they're undocumented in the whole application process for grad school, right? And I mean, sure, that's something to be concerned about. I totally get why you would be worried about that, but you shouldn't be too worried that nothing's going to happen with that information. That doesn't make you any less of an acceptable candidate for grad school or any higher education. Some students fear that disclosing their status on there might somehow that information will get to like ICE or something, right? But no, you should know that all universities are protected. All your information at universities is protected by FERPA. That means that the school is legally cannot give your information out for any reason. The only extreme exceptions are, say, if like there's a court order against you, which in most cases is if you committed like a crime, like you murdered someone, right? That's the only case when they can give out information about you. Or there's maybe legitimate educational interests where like, I don't know, it's nothing that will affect you badly. It's like a company wants to hire you, something that will benefit you, right? They want to give you information to like help you succeed. Or maybe they have a directory of like alumni, students that used to attend their school, but that will not include your status at all. That will just be basic information like your name, email, just the basics. So you shouldn't be worried about that, right? That is not something schools are allowed to do. And if they do, that's really illegal. And hey, that might be an opportunity to apply for a visa because of the unfairness that they did to you, right? So no worries there. Now, another thing to think about is the identification requirement for exams that you need to take to get into grad school. When you're doing grad school, it's kind of like the SATs of grad school. There are GREs, those are like the general exams. There's MCATs, that's for people going to med school. There's LSATs for those who want to go into law school. And usually they want you to provide some type of US identification for you to go to the test and make sure you're not cheating, right? And you're not sending someone else in your place. But that shouldn't really be an issue here in California. Even undocumented people are able to get a driver's license and identification. So if you haven't yet, I would suggest you get one because that would make the process a lot easier. Just show them that and you're set. You have to take the test like everyone else. Or if you have like a US passport, etc., whatever the case is, that can be used as well, as long as it is US identification. But if you don't have either and you don't think you want to get it for whatever reason, there's always the opportunity to just reach out to whatever testing office it is. The ETS Office of Testing and Integrity is the office for the GRE exams. This is their contact information. Just reach out to them way in advance and let them know about your situation and see what accommodations they can make for you. But again, this will take more time and more steps on your part. So not the best option, but if you have to, that's an option as well, okay? All right, so let's pause a little. Those are a couple concerns that you have to keep in mind, right? But how about we look at maybe a timeline of when you should get these things done or how you should start thinking about grad school. Okay, so this is just a suggested timeline. It's just an example of when you should start thinking about what. But I do know some people don't start thinking about grad school until their last year or like junior year or whatever. That's totally fine too. Just adapt all of these thoughts into it, whatever timeline you have set in mind. But this is like the leisurely timeline that you take your time with it, right? So for example, if you're in your sophomore year, you might want to start thinking about like settling down on your major, because some people on their sophomore year, like they might have switched a major the previous year, they're still indecisive. Your sophomore year is a year to just like make sure you know what you want to do. Maybe volunteer, get involved with things related to your major, right? Maybe do research on topics that interest you, like maybe readings, research papers are out there in your field. Maybe to find like what specific thing about your major is something you want to do. Because as I mentioned in the previous section, I want you to know what career you want before you go into grad school, because I don't want you to go in blind, right? Make sure you know what you want, because that's what the grad committees want to see in your application. They want to see that you know what you want to study. You're not just going in for fun. Okay? So sophomore year is a good year to just explore different things, look at career options. Maybe if you're already set on grad school, look into grad school as well. That's totally fine. And for your junior year, for example, this is when you start taking courses that are specific to your major. This is when you should start talking to faculty, your professors, get to know them, and maybe talk to graduate students so they can mentor you and help you through the process of deciding to go to grad school or what to do after college. In terms of research, you can probably apply for like Pathways to Research, any CUIP internships. Maybe some faculty in your department have some projects going on. Maybe you can ask them, hey, do you need an undergrad to help out? Whether it's paid or not, it's still great experience on your resume, right? That's one thing you can do. And also, junior year is a good time to start searching for graduate programs. Like just search up a couple, maybe a state interests you. You want to find yourself in New York in a couple years. Look up what programs are in New York and see if there's any that have stuff related to your major. Maybe start preparing for the exams like the GRE if you already know for sure that you want to go. And consider who could be your recommenders when you need to make letters of rec. Okay, so that'd be good for junior year. For summer between junior and senior year, this is when you can probably try to do a summer research project or an internship if available. Or if not, you can start practicing for the exams for grad school. And they actually have practice exams on their website where you can just download them, time yourself like you're doing the real thing, right? Just to make sure you're set for that. And get that list ready of all the grad schools you want to apply to. Because application deadlines usually start in the fall. Some even open as early as summer. So you can start filling the application out as early as like summer, if not like October, right? So keep that in mind. And then your senior year, this is usually when you should start looking at seminars of like professors in your field. Go see what these talks are about, because these are people that are currently doing research, right? And you want to know what it's like for them before you go into the field. Maybe continue trying to look for internship positions, maybe work on your own projects too. If you don't get internships, that's fine. Start your own projects, right? And when you're applying, the committee will see that, hey, like even if they weren't able to get internships, they took the initiative to start stuff on their own. They researched a ton of things, created their own paper or whatever the case is, right? It all depends on your major, but yeah, if you start your own projects, that's still just as impressive because you didn't need anyone to tell you to do stuff, right? You did it on your own because you're really interested in what you want to study. And yeah, senior year is ideally when you would start applying for grad school, or in other cases, plan for your gap year or however long the gap will last, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it for a sample timeline. And just to give a little bit more details about like the deadlines, application deadlines usually start as soon as like the first week of December. Some start as December 1st. And the deadlines usually go through maybe February latest, but most are due in December and like early January. Okay, so it's a little bit different than undergrad application. It's not the same thing. So now that we looked at that timeline, talked about undocumented concerns, let's look at how to research graduate programs, because there's a lot of out there. How do we start? So as I said previously, in terms of like career exploration, I always suggest online. That's the easiest thing. Start online. So I put here junior year, but again, if you're taking a gap year, ignore that. It's totally fine. Google is your best friend, but there are a couple graduate school search tools that I recommend. I think they're very useful. So the one shown here is the US News graduate school search bar. It's very helpful. You can actually like filter stuff out by like location, maybe like rankings of how good the programs are for a specific school, etc. So let me put that in the chat actually. All right, there's that one. There's also Niche. I will say I kind of don't like that one anymore, but you can use it if you want to. It has a couple features that I really like. They have allow you to put like a certain amount of tuition that limits, and then it shows you schools that have tuition within that range, right? So if you want to make sure you stay in an affordable program, it helps with that. But the thing with niche is that it does have like ads because it's like, I don't know, they have a lot of ads. So that's my only issue with it, but it does have a couple like financial filters that might be useful to you. So that's why I included that. And finally, there's the Princeton Review. This is one of the main grad search websites out there. The Princeton Review has a lot of like test prep material and stuff like that for like the GREs, MCAT, LSATs, whatever. So they're a really great website. On this one, I'm actually going to open so we can look at it together. So this is the Princeton Review. You can look at, just search up graduate schools, but they also have a ton of other information about like things more specific to other majors. So like, for example, if you want to go into business, they have stuff here for so you can get like your master's in business administration, right? They have a lot to do with business actually. And they have stuff for law school or med school specifically, right? So very great resource. And let's see, maybe we can search by like location. I know earlier we mentioned New York, right? So let's look at New York and see what they have. So here you can see, we have a couple colleges here, and it even shows you how many students are enrolled. Keep in mind, grad school is usually a lot smaller than undergrad. In undergrad, you can have like, I don't know, 40,000 students, but then the grad department might just have 1,000. So that's really useful to know how many people will be at that grad department, right? Like, see, even here, this one has only 490 students. It's crazy. 42. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it varies, but yeah, this website is very useful. Say you like a school too. If you create an account here, you can just save it and have your list of schools here as well. So it's just on the website, right? Easily accessible. And say, for example, you're in biomed. Okay, you can view the school. It has a ton of information. It even shows you how many female to male ratios are there, how large the city is, if they have graduate assistantships, which is like TA-ships, right? That's one way to fund yourself. If they're full-time students in the graduate school, some grad departments allow you to be part-time, but that's not usually very common. You know, grad school is kind of invested, so you should be full-time. And yeah, this has a lot of helpful information, right? Even like showing demographics. If there's a Hispanic community there, if there's an American Indian community, an Asian community, right? Again, the idea that wherever you should go, you should also feel comfortable there. So these are very helpful stats. All right, cool. So let me close that off and let me give you the link before I forget. But yeah, that's a great way to start. Just search up online. And let's see, let's continue here. I want to make sure I end on time today. Okay, so there's other ways to find grad programs other than just searching up online. I always like the person-to-person interaction, right? So one great way to find grad programs relevant to you are through your professors, any faculty advisors that you may have. They're the ones that are in your field of study, right? So they would know best what grad programs are out there for your specific field. So it's really great to ask them because they might have people that they graduated with who are professors in some other department and might even be able to directly connect you to, right? An introduction of some kind. And yeah, they sometimes work with professors from other campuses for their research projects. So professors are a really great resource to know about other programs out there. In addition to that, you can also reach out to graduate students either at UCSC or maybe at a school that you know you're interested in going to. Don't be scared to reach out to them. In most cases, they're pretty nice. Sometimes they don't read their emails, but that's okay. Just keep reaching out to however many you need to in order to get someone that will speak to you, right? Because they're the ones that are going through grad school right now. It'll be great to have that first-hand perspective. And in addition to that, just network. Either, like I said earlier in the first part, go to clubs, internships, create LinkedIn, because this allows you to find the people that you wouldn't expect are connected to a grad school you're interested in. Like say, what if like the secretary in one of your clubs ends up at a grad school that you're interested in, and you suddenly find out later on that you want to go to that grad school. Well, great, you have someone that can tell you about it, right? So just network with other people, and who knows what opportunities might pop up as well. So we've got these resources here. Now, in terms of what to look for when you're searching for these grad programs, what I would suggest is like make a list of priorities of what you think is important when considering grad school. This is just an example, and this is what I think of as important when I was looking for grad school. My first priority was to consider whether the campus was undocumented friendly, right? Do they have undocumented resources or like a dedicated program like USS? Because some schools do not have a Dream Center, Undocumented Student Services, nothing, right? And in fact, I think from like 8 schools that I contacted when I was searching for grad school, and when I told them I was undocumented, like what can they offer me? They had no idea, right? Usually when you contact grad schools, you talk to advisors, like they have graduate advisors there to like kind of give you an introduction about the school or whatever if you're interested. Most of them had no idea. It wasn't until I talked to a grad advisor here from Santa Cruz. She didn't know either. She's actually new in her position, but she took the time to reach out and look around campus and connected me with the graduate student mentor at Santa Cruz when I was searching and I was still an undergrad, right? So I really appreciated that. And that's one of the big parts of that made me decide for Santa Cruz, right? Because I knew there was going to be support for me. So always keep that in mind. And then my second priority was funding. How am I going to fund school? It's so expensive. Like we run out of financial aid after 4 years. So look to see if there's any fellowships, any scholarships, grants. And then in the graduate division, you usually get funded by your department. So if there's any funds available, it is that specific department that you're applying to that will give you those funds. So when you're doing your research, ask them, what funding do you have available to me, if any, right? Because some professors at departments have like grants that they have been awarded. So they have like thousands of dollars in funds. They just have to find the right student they want to work with to give those funds to, right? So just look up whatever opportunities are out there or just ask. In addition to that, I also valued curriculum and faculty. So program might sound cool, like just on their homepage, right? But they actually, in most cases, put a handbook that shows what classes you would have to take, whether you're like a master's or a PhD. They usually have separate handbooks and they list what classes you're required to take. And that's really important because you get to see like, okay, this sounds good like in general, but are these classes actually what I want? So take a look at that as well. Just search through their website, that's usually out there. And then faculty. I mentioned this in the first part. You're usually assigned with a specific professor in grad school and you work with them and do research with them during your time in grad school. So it is important to research faculty in that department, right? Don't just apply blindly just because it sounds like a cool department. You gotta make sure what professors are there that can possibly have projects that you're actually interested in. Okay, so yeah, do your research and see if they specialize in what you want to do. And another thing that I considered was geographic location. So do you see yourself living there, right? So do you want to stay in California? Okay, cool. You can look into schools in California, but what if you like the cold? What if you want to go to like Chicago? Just keep in mind, like, do you see yourself living there? And another thing that comes tied to that, is it affordable? Santa Cruz is not one of the most affordable schools, although it's beautiful, right? So just keep that in mind when looking into schools. And finally, one other thing I considered was looking at what equipment, what tools are available to you through whatever department your grad program is, right? See if they have like technology for you. Say like you're in STEM, like do they have labs, like lab space for you, like new equipment, state-of-the-art equipment? Do they have like really cool PCs if you're like in programming or whatever? And they have the material to help you succeed, right? Because if you go and they just don't offer you much and they don't give you funding to get all of this equipment, then what are you gonna do, right? Just make sure they have stuff to help you succeed in your research projects. Okay, but yeah, this is just an example of like what I considered, but you can have your own personalized list based on whatever you prioritize, okay? All right, and then I kind of mentioned this already, but it's important to contact these programs in order to get all these details, right, that are on the list. So in that case, you could reach out to maybe 2 to 3 professors that you're interested in working with. Because in some cases, for example, I was going to apply to this one program and I reached out to a professor and she's told me, hey, actually, I'm not going to be here next year. I'm going on sabbatical. So she was taking like a year off. And I'm like, okay, well, if I hadn't asked and I had just applied and put her as my preferred professor, that would have gone to waste, right? So yeah, it's really great to just contact them. They're usually like really good at just responding and giving information. And then that will help you decide who you want to pick as your advisors when you apply, because that's part of the application. Additionally, there's also the graduate student advisors. Like I mentioned, the advisor here at Santa Cruz, she actually is the one that connected me with USS. So these advisors are usually the first point of contact on the grad department's website. And they know all the details about the application, and they can also help you find other resources like they did with me on campus. So they're really helpful, really great people, and always reach out to them with any questions because they're trained for welcoming new students, right? And yeah, as I've said before, talk to grad students in the departments. Don't be scared. Do you just want to see if you want to be a good fit? I talked to like 3 people here at Santa Cruz before I made up my mind because I'm very indecisive. So no worries, like they weren't bothered. And actually now I'm in a lab with one of them and like we get along great. So just reach out to them, no worries. Okay, cool. All right, that was a lot. Let's see, how much time do I have left? Oof, I have 18 minutes, okay. That was all of the preparing to search for grad schools, like all of that information. Now I have an overview of what the actual application consists of, okay? And I know this is something you guys like might be really curious about, so I wanna make sure I cover it well. I will try to finish it on time, but I don't wanna rush it too much because I wanna make sure you have all the information. Okay, cool. So this are the 6 main sections of the application. Just to give you a perspective, it's kind of long. I think it's quite a bit longer than the undergrad one because undergrad, I think for UCs, it's just like the personal insight questions, the online application, maybe your transcript, and that's pretty much it. But in this case, you do have to fill out like the online application, like always, like with your name, your address, whatever, all the details. You need to send in your transcripts, but also if the department requires these exams, again, you need to send those test scores. And these, like, I think you do with the SATs as well. You have to put the schools that you want it to be sent to when you take the exams. So this is why I stress it's important to have that list of grad schools in mind ahead of time, because you're going to take these tests ahead of time, right? So you can get the results back. So you want to know what schools you want it to be sent to. So yeah, you'll need to send in official transcripts and test scores. In addition to that, the 2 written pieces in the grad application is the personal statement and the statement of purpose. The difference between the 2 is that the personal statement is supposed to be more about you as a person. That is what the grad committee will use to get to know, like, okay, like who are they, where are they coming from, what makes them passionate, stuff like that, right? Not necessarily what you want to study or anything like that yet. You can tie that in, but that's not the focus of this. So this would be you introducing yourself, your background, and like what motivates you in life. And if you really feel comfortable doing so, you can even talk about your undocumented status. That's totally valid too, because that's an obstacle that you've had to overcome and made you a stronger person to get to where you are. I actually talked about my status on mine as well. So whatever you feel comfortable with. And the statement of purpose, on the other hand, this is where you should highlight your research interests and what experiences you've had, if any, like maybe what projects you've done on the side, maybe class projects that you thought came out really well and are relevant, any internship experience, if you had any research experience, etc. Any clubs that you were interested in that really tied in that need to go to grad school and study that topic more, right? This is where you would talk about what you want to study. And try to be as specific as you can. I get it that sometimes you're not going to have a completely clear idea of what exactly you want to do yet. It's totally fine. But try to be as specific as you can, because it shows them that, hey, they've actually done their research and know what they want to do, right? So that's what this is, slightly different from each other. And then the letters of recommendation, there's usually 2 to 3 that they require. And these can be from professors, maybe any advisors, your counselor. It usually should be someone who knows about your work in that field. So professors are the best, but it shouldn't be professors that you never talked to and just showed up to in class of 300 people. Like, they're not going to remember you, right? So that's why it's important to like communicate with your professors, maybe go to office hours if you can, because you want someone that can speak well about you, not just say like, yeah, they went to my class, they turned everything in, great. Like, that doesn't say much about you. Okay, so yeah, that's the letters of rec. And then the resume and CV. This is just a summary of your educational background, any achievements, and any jobs that you've had, right? We know what resumes are like, and if you need any help, the Career Center is a great way to get that going. But yeah, these are the main 6 requirements. And a couple other things I want you to consider is it's not free to do any of these things. I do know the undergrad application also costs money. The SATs also cost money, stuff like that. So yeah, all these exams do have fees. They can be 200 plus. So look to see if like campus has any support for giving you funds. Maybe see if they have any fee waivers for these exams. And in fact, a lot of grad departments don't require these exams anymore. So maybe you might not even have to take them, but just double check because each department is different. It's not like a university-wide thing. Like, each specific program has different requirements. Like, for example, the film and digital media department here, their grad department is completely different from the sociology department. One might require the GRE, one might not, right? So just do your research in your own program. And in terms of the application, the fees are usually like around $100, $120. So check if the school offers a fee waiver. Most UCs offer fee waivers for their graduate application, but it's like a first come, first serve. So if you wait until the last minute towards like the deadline to submit it, you might not get a fee waiver. So this is why it's important to just start ahead, get the application, start filling it out as soon as possible. And finally, some might require a portfolio. Like, maybe if you're like in a humanities or arts field, you might need a portfolio of like your photography, your prints, your paintings, whatever the case is. Or maybe if you're in tech, you might also need to provide a portfolio, but it'd be a digital one, like a website with like all the projects you've done, or like a website with your code, like your GitHub repo or whatever. So you might need a portfolio as well, and that might not be something you're familiar with, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and this is just a resource, so just keep track of all this information. Like I said, each department has different rules, different requirements. They have slight variations, and it's kind of hard to remember what's different with each department. So I have these 2 Google Sheets available for you guys to use, just to keep track of things. So for example, this is a free sheet from PowerScore, and you can just like make your own copy and it'll be added to your drive. And so this is like, has all these different tabs where you can just list, okay, here's one school I want to go to, what the deadline is, the fee, whether you paid it, do they need exams, letters of rec, prereqs, all of these requirements you can just keep track of here and list all the different schools so you just don't forget. They have a ton of other like frequently asked questions in case you need help using this list, this Excel sheet. They have all this information. But yeah, this is one way to go about it. I didn't use this particular one. I actually used this one. This is the one I used at my undergrad. This is from UC Merced. And this one actually has a page dedicated to each program. So I listed all the information here, and then I kept separate pages for each, which I thought helped me better than having them on a list. So whatever works best for you, just make a copy, add it to your drive, and you're set. Okay, cool. Let me give you the links to that. All right. Another step of the process is interviews. So after you submit your application, that's not the end of it. they also want to interview in most cases. So you might submit the application, say in December, January, whatever the case was, but keep an eye out on your email. Like, don't just let the emails accumulate. I know schools send out so many unnecessary emails, but just keep track of that. Actually, now that I'm mentioning that, it'd be even smart to make a separate email just for these applications and use that email so you can keep track of that specific email, and you know that you're only going to get responses from grad schools there, so it doesn't get lost with all the other junk that comes in, right? So that's another thing to think of, because you don't want to miss when they contact you, right? Because they might move on to another student. So the interview process usually takes place, I don't know, like a month after you submit the application. Although if a lot of students have been applying, they sometimes take a bit longer. It just depends how many people applied that time around. So they usually like email you or call you to set up a time to talk. And they usually just want to know more about you before making the final decision. You might be one of the 5 people that they really want to take on, but they can only take on 2. So they have to make a choice, right? So this is why they want to talk to you. So when you're at these interviews, what should you ask though? They will ask you a ton of questions about yourself, right? But make sure you ask them stuff too, because that shows that you're interested. Don't just, when they ask you like, okay, do you have any questions? Don't just sit there and say like, oh no, I'm okay. No, take that opportunity to like make yourself memorable and learn more about their department. Because you also want to see if they're a good fit for you, not just you a good fit for them, right? So one of the first things you can ask is, how will your program provide support to me, right? What do you have available to support me? Also, you can ask if their professors, like, what is their method of possibly like teaching, right? Like, so if you're working with a professor as your like advisor, will they give you a lot of guidance during your research, or do they just let you do stuff on your own and they kind of check up on you every once in a while, right? Each professor has different teaching methods, and you might be more comfortable having more guidance or maybe being more free to do your own thing. So that's something important to ask. Additionally, maybe you might want to know, what's the teacher to student ratio? Like, are there a lot of students in the class, or are there few students, and can the teachers give me the attention I need to actually like learn, right? Because you're doing grad school, this is a lot of detailed information about a major, so like you want to have that one-on-one with the teacher. And additionally, like, what are opportunities like for students to collaborate like outside of class? How does that look like? Do you guys encourage students to work together? That's something really great when coming up with research projects, right? You don't want to do it alone. It'd be great to work as a group because you all have different skills. That's another thing to ask. And if there's any other doubts you have, feel free to add them. But these are a couple of things that I think are really good if you can't think of what to ask. And yeah, I think that will cover up all we have to do today. So just keep in mind that I have my drop-in hours 4 days a week. On these days, this is my flyer. In addition to me, there's also the Graduate Information Program. They're another division of EOP, and they're a really great resource for graduate information, but they take appointments only. So they also have like a Google form for that. I will send that to you as well in the chats. Okay, and yeah, that will conclude today's session. So like I said, email me if you have any questions, and tomorrow will be the third and final part where we go step by step on all the sections of the application and look into ways to fund grad school, because it's so expensive. We all need to know different resources and how to plan that, right? So yeah. Wow, I have 5 minutes left. Okay, good. My timing was great. Any questions, you guys?
I have a follow-up question. I know the USS program has like mentor-mentee programs. Is there any of those programs but for grad school?
Mentor, well, it would only be my position. I'm the graduate student mentor, so mine is the only mentorship for the grad division. And I am there to either help out people who want to go to grad school or current graduate students, right? But mine is the only position. I do know the other mentors, there's like 5 of them, and there's a mentorship program, but Yeah, I'm the only position under USS. But if you're thinking, well, I don't know, are you thinking of applying to UCSC for grad school? Is that something you're considering?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Because actually, Ganas, have you heard of Ganas?
No, I have not.
Okay, cool. Let me show you. And this might be helpful for everyone else. Thank you for mentioning that because it brought this to mind. So Ganas is a program under the HSI initiative here at UC Santa Cruz. So they got funds for a variety of things. And actually they have a graduate services counselor. His name's Angel. Really nice person, really funny. He also has like these mentoring hours for you to go to if you want to go to him also, but in the works, he has a graduate summer bridge program that he's planning, and any incoming graduate students to UCSC can sign up, and they will get to spend like a week on campus at the dorms, and it'll just help them learn about different resources on campus and kind of help transition to grad school, right? So that's something that's coming up and it might repeat every year because this is like a grant that the school has. So hopefully it can happen more than 1 year. So if you're considering applying to Santa Cruz, that might be something available to you, but it might vary by campus, right? So if you were planning on applying to other campuses too in order to go there, they might have something similar. So this goes hand in hand with the part where I said like, ask those graduate advisors about what the school offers, right? Because they're the ones that will know, because I cannot do my research on every university in the US. I wish I could, so I can give you guys all the information, but those advisors know best about the specific campuses. But yeah, so this is happening. I don't know if you already applied or were planning on applying for the next cycle of grad school. But I hope this repeats, and you can either contact him too if you have any questions. He's a really great resource as well. Let me send you the link to this. But does that answer your question? I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific.
No, yeah, that was perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, grad school, every department, every campus is different. So just contact those graduate advisors and ask everyone questions. But yeah, any other questions? That was a really great question.